Welcome to the Economic Liberation of Africa podcast. In this video, we will discuss a presentation done by Dr. Jeffrey Sachs, an American economist and public policy analyst known for his work on economic development, poverty reduction, and sustainable development. He has served as an advisor to various African leaders and institutions, including those associated with the African Union. In this video, he will discuss 6 areas of investment necessary for Africa to achieve a China level of industrialization over the next 40 years. Gerry, what can you add to my statement about Dr. Jeffrey Sachs in regards to his who he is and what he believes?
Sure, Peter. I think just based on some of my research on Jeffrey Sachs, he appears to have significant commitment to the effort in terms of providing information about the continent and where it needs to be or where it will be over the next 35, 40 years. So I'm glad that he's the kind of person who is championing the effort of some of the leadership in the continent as they begin to bridge relationships and find ways for economic development as the continent continues to grow with its right now 1.3 billion, which is going to be 2 billion over so many years. So I think this is a unique opportunity to keep the conversation going about opportunities and what to expect as this continued growth happens in the continent.
Okay. Does he mention what his strategic belief is in regards to the growth of Africa?
Well, he compares Africa to China. China, at some point in time was in a similar situation as, the continent of Africa, underdevelopment, didn't have a lot of poverty, didn't have a lot of infrastructure and things in place. And so his comparison to China is immense because China has grown exponentially, as you know. And right now, the population of Africa with young people, and this is going to be immense for the continent and potential opportunities economically for Africa. So I think his perspective is certainly something to pay close attention to.
I agree with you, and as I understand it, he says that in his opinion, Africa is going to be the fastest growing economy in the world over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And it's where the investment money should be headed. Now, he also talked about, you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the potential for not just education. I mean, certainly you will have the need a skilled workforce, but the potential for infrastructure development, manufacturing, and some of the things that are already going on in Africa. I mean, we have to look at some of these emerging economies in Africa right now that are experiencing some significant growth. So, yeah, absolutely, I agree with him.
And he mentions that there are really 6 basic areas that Africa needs to concentrate on if they are going to experience the kind of growth that he is forecasting. And he says it's education, health, energy systems, agriculture, urban and interurban infrastructure, and digital. Now, what he's also saying is that digital is the most important area of focus that has to be addressed if Africa is going to have if Africa is going to realize the kind of growth potential that he is outlining. And he says that because he says that everything in the industrialized world is run through digital. And so he's really suggesting that.
Digital and technology. Yeah, I think that's true. I think, just like Americans in the West and other countries and nations, I mean, we use technology and cell phones and all that kind of, and people on the ground and the continent are using similar items. The other thing I would say is, he didn't talk a whole lot about, but he mentioned it, is the political situation in a lot of the countries in Africa. I mean, I think there's going to have to be some kind of agreement between all parties that our focus is to create unique opportunities and economic development in Africa and put some of the political differences aside. Because as you know, that is one thing that really hampers a lot of economies from moving forward. And the other thing I would say is, United States certainly can say some of the things in terms of what works, but, nobody has a larger military than the United States of America. And so, when you're talking about empowering another countries in 54 countries in Africa and identifying partners who can work with you, we got to put these wars aside, because I think these wars have many challenges for everybody. And I don't know how you do that as you continue. China has a pretty large military as well. So we're going to have to beef up our military presence in the continent as well as we begin to mitigate some of the political challenges that we may have.
I agree with you. And this reminds me of a video that I have in production that I should publish probably tomorrow, where we talk about how the Western powers have intentionally underdeveloped Africa so that the Western powers can maintain Africa as a supplier of the natural resources that the Western powers use to sustain their economies. And
right.
And there are a couple of points that I'd like to make, just so that we have some kind of perspective of what we as diasporans can do to help with the economic liberation of Africa. And that is that we can challenge the Western world to invest in the industrialization of Africa. And we have to be vocal, we have to be consistent. We can challenge the Western world to stop investing in African wars and creating instability that industrial nations use to keep Africa in an underdeveloped posture so that the Western world can continue to rob Africa of its riches to the detriment of African people. So, anything else you want to add? I think we've touched on Dr. Sachs, and I am going to put a link in the description below so that people can actually review the presentation that he did. And before I go any further, let me just add something that I try to add to all of my videos. So we produced this video in support of ADDI and Dr. Arikana and the work that she is doing to bring economic liberation to Africa. So also in our description, we'll add a link to the website for ADDI, and we just urge all of our viewers, all of our listeners to become members of ADDI and speak in public forums to try to promote what it is that Africa needs in order to become industrialized. So, Gerry, I'm sorry for that long-winded statement.
That's all right.
Well,
right. You're always on point, Peter.
Well, thanks so much. That's kind. But go ahead if you have some closing remarks.
I would say, just like anything, this is a game of chess, and I think everybody's, all these other Western powers, are bidding on Africa right now, and so the leadership and the continent has to determine what's in their best interest. And we need to realize that, even though there's some investments going on from the United States and Africa and China and so on and so forth, there's still, we still don't have full control of the monetary system. And so as we begin to pull back on certain things that really control the future and the economic well-being of the continent, we got to determine who's going to be the best partner for what we're trying to do, or what Africa is trying to do long term. And with the young population that's emerging in Africa right now, I think you're going to see some of that begin to shift. And when we, start reaching out across the borders amongst each other to determine what's in our best interest, who's the best partners for what we're trying to do to grow our economies across the continent. We got to pay close attention to that because, as you know, everybody's not your friend.
That is true. Let me say this in closing, and the point that Dr. Sachs makes is that in these critical areas that he has identified, there have to be continuous, meaningful investment, because in order for Africa to be industrialized, it has to have a well-trained citizenry, and the only way that the citizens of Africa are going to be trained and ready to produce is for the African countries to invest in the areas that Dr. Sachs highlighted. So thank you so much, and we'll do it again. I appreciate it. Have a great one.
You too. Thanks so much.
So with that being said, again, if you like what we're talking about, if you appreciate what we're talking about, please give us a like, subscribe to our channel, sign our notification bell, and leave some comments. We want to know what you think, what you suggest, because what we're doing is we're setting out to economically liberate Africa and Africans in the diaspora. And with that being said, I'm going to conclude this session and invite all back for our next session. Thank you so much.